excited that you're joining us today here at 2911 Kids. Today, we are going to venture into our last week in our series called Wise. So far, we've learned all about this guy named Solomon, and we have learned so much from him. We learned that we can ask God for wisdom, that we can trust God, and we can ask God for the right words to say. Today, we're going to learn from another wise guy. His name was Nehemiah. But before we learn about Nehemiah, let's jump into today's game.
It's time to play reverse. Stand up, sit down. If the arrow points up, you have to sit down. If the arrow points down, you have to stand up. If you go the same direction as the arrow, you are out. Better watch closely because things can get tricky fast. Let's try a practice round. You're getting it now. It's time for round one. Did you make it through round one? If so, let's move on to round two. Did you make it through round two? Let's go again. A little faster this time. Let's go again. Let's go even faster this round. Can you go even faster? Thanks for playing reverse. Stand up, sit down.
Phew! That game was exhausting! I really had to ask myself if I was doing the right thing. Have you ever needed to ask someone a question before? Of course, we all have. Today, we're going to talk about asking questions. But before we do, let's go hear our big idea. We can ask God our questions. The person in our story today had to ask God and some other people some really big questions. Let's go hear about Nehemiah.
This is the story of Nehemiah and the Jerusalem wall.
Oh yeah, Nehemiah. I love that story.
Nehemiah was a man who was born as a servant to a king and eventually became a cupbearer.
One day, a friend of Nehemiah's came to visit him. He told Nehemiah of how the wall in Jerusalem that kept all the people safe had been torn down and destroyed.
Nehemiah was very sad when he heard that. He wept and prayed for days for the people of Jerusalem.
Nehemiah knew that the wall needed to be rebuilt, but he knew he couldn't leave the palace without the king's permission.
God had given Nehemiah much favor with the king. When Nehemiah told the king of what had happened to the wall, the king not only allowed him safe passage through his kingdom, but also funded the trip and the rebuilding of the wall.
I wonder if Nehemiah was afraid to leave the land he had known for so long.
I'm sure he was afraid, but he chose to trust God and step out on faith instead of giving in to his fear. When Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, he gathered a team of people to begin rebuilding the wall. While they built the wall, Nehemiah and his men were made fun of. They were trying to keep them from rebuilding the wall.
I wouldn't want people making fun of me.
But that didn't stop Nehemiah. He cared more about what God thought of him than what those around him did.
Wow, that's so cool. I want to be like Nehemiah.
The people worked from sunup to sundown, continuing until the wall was complete. Nehemiah became a leader for the Israelite people, and God took care of him and the people for Nehemiah's choice to obey him.
God takes care of those who follow his commands.
And when you take the initiative to do good, then your light shines even brighter.
See a need, fill a need, just like Nehemiah.
Nehemiah really wanted to rebuild that wall around Jerusalem. But first, he had to get permission from King Artaxerxes. And that was not an easy task. He had already came to God. This shows that we can go to God with all of our questions. What kind of questions do you have for God? Carl has a lot. So let's go to Grow TV and see what Carl needs to ask.
Well, hello there, you little chicken nuggets. It's me, Carl.
And I'm Cassie. Welcome to Grow TV.
Welcome.
Welcome to Grow TV. Introducing your host, Carl. And your co-host, Cassie. Where we learn, where we grow, and we talk about Jesus. Once again, welcome to Grow TV.
So Carl, how are you doing today?
Not doing too bad. I have a lot on my mind today.
Really? What do you mean?
I don't know if you know this about me, Cassie, but I am an intellectual. Intellectual.
An intellectual? Really?
I am a person of vast intelligence. My brain is so big that it's puzzled multiple doctors. Hundreds, actually. Hundreds.
I'm sure it has.
So I was sitting at home with my enormous brain, and I wrote down some questions I think we should discuss and ponder over. Converse, if you will.
Do you really feel like this is the best use of our time?
Too late! The copyright-free classical music is already playing in the background. How much deeper would the ocean be if sponges didn't live in there? Why doesn't glue stick to the inside of a bottle? Why do we drive on parkways and park on driveways? If a cow laughed, would milk come out of its nose? Why do skydivers wear helmets? Why does your nose run and your feet smell? Why don't your lips touch when you say the word touch, but they touch when you say the word separate?
Wow, that was...
Remarkable, life-changing, thought-provoking.
I was gonna say interesting, but sure.
I get it, Cassie. You're jealous of my ginormous brain and the questions it has created.
I don't know if that's true. Besides, those were good questions, but kind of silly.
Silly?
Yeah, did you have any more?
Well, sure, but I don't know about them.
Can I look?
Sure, I guess.
What's my purpose? What does it mean to live a good life? How can I learn to forgive? Wow, Carl, these are really good questions.
You think?
Of course, I think these are questions you should be asking God.
Wait, I can ask God questions?
Of course, have you never done that?
I don't think I have.
Well, let me tell you this, God would love to hear you ask those questions.
Really?
Yeah, and you never know. They might be answered in really cool ways, like Nehemiah.
What?
Nehemiah, from the Old Testament.
Oh, Nehemiah. I remember that story, but for the people watching who don't, how do you say, remember the story, how about you give like a brief recap for them, not for me, because I know it.
Okay, Carl. Well, a long time ago, there was a king, and the cupbearer of the king was named Nehemiah. And the walls of Nehemiah's hometown, Jerusalem, were broken down. They were in shambles.
What? That's awful. I mean, I knew that already.
It really was. Now Nehemiah cared about his hometown so much that he prayed to God that he could return and help build the wall back.
Now that's a big question. Not only did he have to be the cupbearer to the king, but building a wall would be like a ton of work.
It would, but it meant a lot to Nehemiah, so he knew that he had to ask God about it. Once Nehemiah was around the king knew something was wrong and knew that Nehemiah wanted to ask him something. So the king asked Nehemiah what was on his mind.
Did he tell the king about his desires to go back to Jerusalem?
He did, but first he prayed to God about it. It was important to him that he asked God first, and then he asked the king.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It was. It was even cooler that the king said yes. He was going to let Nehemiah go back and help build the wall.
No way, that's great. All because he just asked the question.
Yep, but it only worked out because Nehemiah asked God the question first. So God was actually with Nehemiah when he asked the king.
Well, I guess that answers one of my questions.
Which one was that?
Well, I've been wondering how I'm going to get answers to all my questions. And I never thought about asking God, but I will now.
That's great to hear, Carl. I'm glad you know now that we can ask God our questions.
Well, hot dog, that's our big idea.
Today's big idea is we can ask God our questions.
That's right. And on the count of 3, let's all say it together. 1,
2,
3. We can ask God our questions. We can. God will answer. In one way or another. Right? Yes.
So what are you going to do with that big list of questions, Carl?
Well, I'm going to keep them, and I'm going to ask God the questions. Hopefully I can get some answers.
I bet you will. Maybe to even some of those silly ones.
Well, there you go again. There's nothing silly about this question. What cheese is the moon made out of?
Oh, I thought you already knew. The moon is made out of mozzarella.
Wait, what?
Bye, everyone.
We can eat the moon? It's made out of cheese.
Thank you for watching, and tune in next week for a new episode of Row TV.
Carl has some really good questions. Growing up, I would ask God what He wanted me to do, or how I could help people. I would also ask how I could change to be a better person. God wants us to ask Him questions just like Nehemiah did. Even Jesus asked questions. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call to me and I will answer you, and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known." You may not always get the answer that you were hoping for, but God will answer you. God can also use other people to help answer your question. For example, whenever I first started attending Church 2911, I asked God how I could help. And He brought me here to 2911 Kids. And now I get to do the Bible lesson for you. And that is so awesome!
No, I won't be afraid. You are with me. You are right beside me every day. Even when it feels like everything's going wrong, I can look up to you, God, and find my strength. Your love has lifted me above the raging sea. And I just gotta say, your love makes me brave, and I won't be afraid. Your love makes me brave, I can face anything. Your love makes me brave. I was lost and afraid till you found me. You lifted me up and gave me strength. Anywhere that I go, you go with me. Oh, Lord, you give me the courage to live each day.
God, ask Him. He loves whenever you talk to Him. If you would like more activities that go along with what we learned about today, make sure you check out our kids page at church2911.com/kids. And make sure that you are back here next week because we're going to start a brand new series called Amazed. So put on your lab coats as we learn about an awesome guy named Elijah. See you then.
Hey everyone, I'm glad you're here. Hey, what's your favorite thing to draw? I like to draw pizza, and puppies, and my family. But I have a really big family, so they're kind of hard to draw. Have you ever made something that was really hard to make? Well, in today's story, we'll meet a guy named Nehemiah who wanted to make something that was really hard to make. It wasn't a drawing, but let me tell you what it was. Nehemiah was from a city called Jerusalem, but he lived far away. When our story begins, Nehemiah was sad. He'd just heard from his brother that his hometown was in trouble. The people in Jerusalem didn't follow God like they used to, and the walls surrounding their city were falling down. This was hard news for Nehemiah to hear. He trusted God, but he didn't understand why the city he loved was crumbling like that. So Nehemiah went to the king he worked for and asked for permission to go home and lead his people in rebuilding Jerusalem. The king said, "Go!" and even gave Nehemiah help in making the long journey ahead of him. Rebuilding the walls was a big job. In fact, even though Nehemiah knew God wanted him to lead his people, he wasn't sure how to get it done. But Nehemiah trusted God. He said, "Okay, God, if this is going to happen, you'll have to tell me what to do next." And guess what? God heard Nehemiah's prayers and showed him what to do. Even when people doubted if Nehemiah knew what he was doing, he knew God was right there, helping him every time he had a question. Just like Nehemiah went to God when he wasn't sure what to do, we can ask God our questions too.